As the commanding officer of 2 Service Battalion, one of my principal responsibilities is the combat service support for all the units that we, in effect, have to support. Combat service support being maintenance and logistics, supply and transportation. Another key responsibility is what we term as the training of the troops and soldiers, the CSS soldiers, that are due to deploy to Afghanistan. So what is involved in that? It's quite a lot of challenge. First and foremost is the identification of those personnel who are scheduled to deploy. And then once we've done that, we prepare them and form them into a unit called the National Support Element. And they commence their training as a team, usually about 6 months before deployment. And what's involved in that is essentially getting them ready for the conditions that they expect to encounter in Afghanistan, getting them ready for the tasks that they're expected to do, and getting them ready to deal with essentially what will be a very demanding operation. So that will involve a certain degree of obviously training in the basic soldier skills, preparing them to work on convoy operations overseas, and preparing them in effect to deal with specialist equipment that they're going to see in Afghanistan that they don't necessarily get to see day in, day out here in Canada. So it's a fairly involved process. Once those individual skills have been honed, we then put them into the field, if you will, and this year what we did was we deployed them to California. There's quite a lot about that in the news this year, to train as a team and to train as a task force. So the NSC soldiers, the support soldiers, train under conditions which ideally mirror what they're going to see in Afghanistan, and they do the job that they're expected to do in Afghanistan. So they practice that, and they practice that for quite a few weeks before we deem that they're prepared to do that job in Afghanistan.
The training that we specifically did in Texas entailed live fire level 5 and 6 ranges. That includes labs with tanks, fast air, attack helicopters, the full gambit of live fire prior to deploying to Afghanistan. The reason we went to Texas is because, excuse me, my training, or our training at the time, would have been in Wainwright in the winter, and to deploy to Afghanistan after training in winter really didn't make a lot of sense. So they deployed us to Texas, and where the terrain was very similar to Afghanistan. There was also a number of villages that were built for our training to simulate villages in Afghanistan as well. The climate in Texas is very similar. Cold at night, warm during the day, and the vegetation was very similar to Afghanistan, and thus the reasons we went to Texas to conduct our